Good morning.
Okay.
It is my complete honor this morning to introduce H.K. Derryberry and his mentor and friend, Jim Bradford. 13 years ago, Jim Bradford, happily married with 2 grown daughters, was on his way to purchase a cup of hot coffee at Starbucks when he unexpectedly stopped at a fast food restaurant better known for fried chicken than for coffee. Jim believed God completely served as his GPS that morning. In addition to the cup of coffee, he met a 9-year-old, H.K. Derryberry, sitting all alone listening to the radio, something he did every Saturday morning waiting for his grandmother to complete her 8-hour shift as the restaurant's cashier. Jim quickly became HK's friend and mentor, opening a world to both of them that they didn't know existed. I think you'll be completely inspired by the dynamic story of one man caring enough to reach out and form a remarkable friendship with a boy who desperately needed a role model in his life. Please join me in warm welcoming H.K. Derryberry and Jim Bradford.
Thank you. Okay. Ready?
Mr. Bradford, is it a big crowd today?
It is a very large crowd. Are you nervous?
No, Mr. Bradford, I'm blind, so why does there need to be nervous? I was just curious.
Okay. Well, it is a big crowd.
Good morning, Lipscomb. My name is H.K. Derryberry, and this is my friend and mentor, Mr. Bradford.
Good morning.
We are delighted to be here today. I am not a preacher, so our presentation will be different, so there won't be any need to use your computerized devices. I hope that our presentation today is
Don't play the other thing.
inspirational, motivational, and maybe just a little humorous. I understand all the girls and ladies at Lipscomb are beautiful. And all the boys and men are handsome. And I have been told Lipscomb is an outstanding university and that your president is one of the most outstanding presidents in the entire of any university in the entire nation.
HK, who told you that?
Someone told me that. Dr. Lowry told me that.
Now remember, this is a Christian school.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Keep going.
As you may not realize by looking at me, I have some physical limitations. I am blind and I have cerebral palsy. So I cannot do a lot of the things that most of you without disabilities can do. But I dream of doing them. I even want to try to do them sometimes. I love sports. A few years ago, one day after Alabama crushed Tennessee in football, and I overheard an irate Tennessee football fan say, "Our quarterback must be blind. He can't complete a pass." When I heard that, I got really excited. Because if the quarterback's blind, since I'm blind, I can probably try out for quarterback of my football team. So, when I was in the 10th grade, I tried out for the football team. And the coach took one look at me and said, HK, thanks for trying out, but you are not fast enough, you don't weigh enough, and you can't grunt loud enough. So I didn't make the team. But I didn't give up. I just thought, football is just not my thing. So then I thought about basketball because the Bison just seems like all they do is dribble the ball on the floor, let their shoes squeak, and beat Belmont. But then I thought, I'm too short for that sport. So I just thought, maybe sports is just not my thing. So then I thought, I've been riding in my grandmother's vehicle for 22 years now, and she makes driving seem really easy. And when I heard that all the Lipscomb girls drive and text at the same time, I figured since I can't text, driving must be easy. So I enrolled in driver's education, and the instructor took one look at me and said, HK, thanks for coming, but you need a driver's license for this course. Come back when you can get one. And as you can imagine, I hadn't been back. Folks, I understand Lipscomb is a Christian school, and what I just told you was not true. I cannot do football or drive because of my disabilities. But I can do lots of things as in the Bible, as Romans 12:6 says. God has given each of us the ability to do certain things well. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Let me share with you a few years ago, one of my teachers took an interest in me and said to me one day, we have determined you have some capabilities. Once we figure out what those capabilities are, you can do about anything that you set your mind to if you just work hard enough. Let me share with you some of the things I've done. I drive a boat every summer on Thames Ford Lake. I flew an airplane one time to Kentucky and back. And I did not hit a thing. I ride horses every spring and fall at Paradise Ranch in Springfield. And I even participate in horse shows where I'm the only blind rider lots of times. So I participate in everything that sighted people do, but I still win ribbons and trophies in the horse shows. And I've even snow skied in Snowmass, Colorado back in December. the instructors voted me best blind skier ever. So, and two of my biggest accomplishments include, three of my biggest accomplishments include, on May 24th of this year, the student body at where I went to school voted me king of my high school prom. On June 1st of this year, I graduated high school. I took all the courses that any senior in the state of Tennessee takes, and I passed them all. Including algebra. And then on January 24th of 2010, I got baptized. A couple years ago, within the past 2 years, Vanderbilt has been studying my memory and my brain, and Vanderbilt has determined that I am one of only a few people in the world that has hyperthymesia, which is better known as superior autobiographical memory, which means I can remember anything that has happened to me on any given day of my life since I was 3 years old. And a friend of mine, Scott Hamilton, ice skater, gold medalist in the 1984 Winter Olympic Games, said to me one time, HK, the only disability any of us have in life is a negative attitude. So I encourage everyone to always have a positive outlook on life and positive attitude, because it will help you along the way. It will help you accomplish a lot of things. So what I'm saying to you here is, if you're ever down and lonely, depressed, just think of HK. I'm blind, have cerebral palsy, and think of everything I've accomplished. If without your disabilities, if I can do it, surely you can accomplish a lot also. Now it's you.
Yeah, I want to share with you, HK didn't tell you the entire story. Many of you probably know of children that are born with birth defects. Today, with the technology, the doctors sometimes know about those defects before the birth actually occurs. And in many cases, they can go in and do surgeries and correct those things before birth. HK is blind and cerebral palsy for one reason, well, maybe more reasons than one, because I truly think that God had a reason for his life. But it's due to the lifestyle of his mother and father. His mother and father were not married. His dad, William, was 26. His mother, Mary, was 19. They had been into drugs and alcohol for many years at those young ages. And on July the 7th, 1990, William had worked on a farm that day baling hay. Mary was excited about going to pick him up from work to take him, to get him so that they could go out on the town that night for dinner and maybe more drinks. So she took his favorite beverage to meet him after work, and that was ice cold beer. On their way home from, after drinking the beer, on their way home to get ready to go, they had a single car accident, and his mother was killed. She was in her 6th month of pregnancy. So they life-flighted his mother's body from the accident scene in Murray County to Vanderbilt Hospital, where he spent the first 96 days of his life. But the doctors basically told Mary's mother that, hey, we can deliver the baby or we can let him go with her. If we deliver, he's going to have a lifetime of major medical issues. Her mother said, as I've been told, salvage what you can, which means deliver him. That same mother, that grandmother, lives 50 miles from Nashville. HK is now 22 years old. She has never attempted to see him after that day. So each time HK and I sat on the stage to make these presentations, he just reconfirms my belief that God still performs miracles. He's a very special person. Okay.
Before I was 9 years old, my grandmother and I did not have much of a social life. So, because we didn't have many people to come to our house, I did not have many kids to play with. We didn't go out to eat with people. So, when I wasn't in school, all I did when I wasn't in school and my grandmother and I wasn't doing something, from the time I got up in the morning till I went to bed at night, I listened to a radio, which for somebody who is blind and has cerebral palsy can be kind of a really lonely life, because you don't get to have friends, go outside and play with kids. A lot of kids thought I looked different, and they were afraid of me. So what I'm saying is that when I was 9, I met Mr. Bradford, and he became my friend. He changed my life. He let me see for him. He let me borrow his eyes. What I mean by that is he explained things to me. Like when we were passing McDonald's in his car, he would explain to me what business we were passing. He would explain like farmlands. He would, if it was horses, he would explain to me how many horses. If it was houses, he would explain the color. And if it was brick, and he would explain to me if it was a crop field, he would explain to me what kind of crops. If it was sporting event, he would explain to me what was going on, and he would explain to me the rules of each game. So Mr. Bradford really did let me borrow his eyes, and he didn't charge me any rent for them.
Well, it was, as Keela said in the introduction, the morning that I met HK 13 years ago, this past October, I had played tennis with a group of my tennis friends. We'd been playing for about 28 years every Saturday morning in the winter, and I normally drink 1 cup of coffee a day, and that morning we had met at McDonald's in Green Hills before we played tennis, and I'd already had 1 cup of coffee. But as we were playing tennis, normally after we finished, we always sat around drinking water, Gatorade, cooling off, and talking for an hour or so. But for some reason, as we played, all I could think about was getting another cup of hot coffee. And so when we finished playing tennis, they stayed and I left, which normally didn't happen, and I took a back route going to Brentwood because I was on my way to Starbucks to pay $3 for a cup of coffee. And as I got down Franklin Road right before I got to Old Hickory Boulevard, I look up in the sky about 30 feet, and there's a red and white sign that says, Mrs. Winter's Fried Chicken. Not sure why, other than the fact today I look back thinking God was my GPS, but I slammed on my brakes. If you've ever been there, you have to go, it's now Church's Chicken, but you have to go across a little bridge over the railroad tracks, and I parked and walked in, and the cashier said, may I help you? I said, yes, ma'am, I'd like a cup of coffee. And I'm telling probably the longer version of the story, but she said, are you 55 years old? And I'm thinking, what does my age have to do with coffee? I looked around thinking I didn't look that old. Surely I was that old, but nobody was in the restaurant. And so I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, that's good because your coffee's 25 cents because you're a senior rather than 95. And I'm thinking, well, maybe being older is pretty good after all. But I get my coffee and I fix it like probably you do. I put my sugar and my cream in it, stirred it, sipped it to make sure it was just perfect. When I turned around, I looked, and there was a little boy sitting at a table by himself listening to a radio. You won't get this, but it was a little black radio, small boom box. It had been dropped and broken at one time because there was 2 pieces of silver duct tape on the back holding the batteries. And if there's anybody my age, I grew up in Alabama in a rural area, and back in the 50s, silver duct tape we called chrome. If your bumper was rusted out on your car, you just took some silver duct tape and patched it up, and that was, got it fixed. But anyway, I thought it was unusual, so I turned back around, and there was a lady, not the grandmother. His grandmother was the cashier. I found out later. And I asked this other lady, I said, her name is Helen. I said, Helen, who's the little boy? And she said, well, that's HK. He's our sweetheart. What's he doing here? Well, his grandmother can't afford a babysitter, so on Saturday and Sunday, while he's not in school, he comes and sits while she works. I said, how long does he sit? She said, oh, just from 8 till 5. And at this time, he was 9, but HK he was 50 pounds. He looked about 5 years old. And I'm thinking, my daughters, when they were that age, they could only sit still for maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the time. And here's a little kid having to listen to radio in a restaurant for 8 hours. And then she said, he's blind. And I don't know about you, but up until that point, if I saw someone with a disability, with a handicap, I felt sorry for them. I had pity for them, but I never said much other than just thinking, isn't that pitiful? But when she said that to me, a big tear formed in my right eye and rolled down my cheek and bounced off my warm-up outfit. And for some reason, I walked over and I said, hey, buddy, what's your name?
My name is HK. What's your name?
I'm Jim, HK. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Where do you live?
I live in Brentwood.
What street?
I live on Harpeth River Drive.
What's that off of?
It's off of O'Hickory Boulevard.
What time did you get up?
I got up at
this
6 o'clock.
morning? And then what did you do?
I got in the shower.
And then what?
I put on my tennis outfit.
And then what?
My favorite all-time movie is Groundhog Day. If any of you saw that movie, Phil Connor was caught in a time trap, and he woke up every morning to the same music and to the same events in this town. And until eventually he broke the time warp and he knew everything about everybody. Well, anyway, long story short, that's what HK couldn't carry on a logical conversation. He could ask a lot of questions, but that was the extent of his ability to communicate. I got away from there in about 2 minutes thinking, this crazy little kid, I don't want to answer all these questions. But I couldn't get him off my mind. When I got home, I told Brenda about him, and she didn't, my wife, and she just thought it was some joke, I guess, that I was telling. But the next Saturday, I thought about HK because I thought about him all week. So I go back to the restaurant to see if he's there in the afternoon about 3 o'clock. And sure enough, I see his little head in the same window. Get all excited, go in. And I'm not going to go through this, HK, because he just asked me those same questions because we're on a time constraint this morning. But anyway, then eventually I started going back every Saturday. And I would spend 30 minutes with him. Then I'd go back on Sunday. And if he and his grandmother hadn't gotten off from work, I'd spend 30 minutes. Pretty soon it was an hour on Saturday and an hour on Sunday. Eventually I asked his grandmother if I could take him away from the restaurant to allow him to do something other than sit at the restaurant. Then I took him home eventually to meet my wife Brenda. A year later, Brenda said, why don't we invite him to go to church with us at Harpsville Church of Christ? And he's the most famous member there today, and he's been going for 12 years now. And so he was all excited. And so the first Sunday we took him to church with us was in December, and the person making the announcement that morning said, next Sunday, all the adults will go between the 2 worship services during the Sunday school hour. They'll go to the Family Life Center and enjoy a brunch. The children will still go to Sunday school classes. So when we got in the car that morning after worship, Brenda said, HK, we're going to take you to lunch with us today, and you can be our guest. And he said, great. And then he said, Brenda.
Can kids go to the brunch?
Well, she looked at me and winked. She said, well, yes, I think so. I said, do you like brunches?
I love brunches.
Okay, well, you can go with us. Well, the rest of the day, HK must have told Brenda about 30 times about how he thanked her for letting him go to the brunch because he loves brunches. That Sunday night when I took him home, because he spent the day with us, well, that was Sunday night. That night when I took him home, the last thing he said, Brenda, thank you so much. At that time, he had a little lisp. He didn't talk like he does today. Brenda said, thank you so much for letting me go brunch. I'm looking forward to it next week. Brenda said, HK, Mr. Bradford pick you up next Sunday, and you can go to the brunch. He said, thank you. The next weekend, on Saturday, before the brunch, I pick him up, and he must have told Brenda again about 12 times that how much he appreciated it and he loved brunches. So right before I got ready to take him home on that Saturday night, before the Sunday morning brunch, he said, Brenda, and she said, yes, HK.
What is a brunch?
So he loved it, but he just didn't know what it was. Okay, so that's kind of some of the humorous things that have happened to us. About a year later, Brenda said, why don't you invite him, see if his grandmother will let him spend weekends with us. That way you wouldn't have to get up in the winter and go get him on cold Sunday mornings, bring him back and change his clothes. So for the last 11 years, he spent almost every weekend that we're in town, he spent them with us. And many times when we're out of town at the lake, and sure enough, the true things he told you, he does drive a boat. He's a wonderful boat driver. And just takes a little bit of direction because he knows how to hold the steering wheel and keep us on a straight path for hours at the time. He loves it. But some of the other neat things that have happened to us are just, I'll share some of the funny things. But HK has become quite famous in and around Brentwood and Nashville because in 2003 there was a real nice article about the two of us in the newspaper in the Tennessean that was read by probably over 1 million people. And people for the next 5 or 6 years would see us at Kroger. And they'd come up and say, excuse me, aren't you the little boy that I saw in the newspaper? And so that made him famous. But I'll tell you just a couple of the stories. One morning I got a handicap placard because when he's with me, we can park closer to the entrances to businesses. One morning we went to Kroger one Saturday morning, and I parked in probably all of you have really well-organized glove boxes in your car. Well, mine isn't. It's just kind of got a lot of papers where I've oil changes and tire rotations and all the papers that go with it. And so I'm flipping through my glove box, and HK says,
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for my handicap placard.
I didn't know you were handicapped.
I'm not, knucklehead, you are.
Oh, I forgot.
So first time I took him to Home Depot, he was small enough that I could just put him up in the basket and roll him around. And men are more vain than women. We don't like to ask for instructions. And so I was looking for a specific type of light bulb, and I thought I was on the right aisle. I was down on aisle 31 thinking that was the right place, and I'm rolling around. HK keeps saying, Mr. Bradford, are you fanning? I said, no, let's go over to aisle 30. Finally, a guy in an orange apron walks up and says, may I help you, boys? And I said, yes, I'm looking for this special light bulb. He said, man, you're at the wrong end of the store. It's on aisle 3. HK says,
that's like the blind leading the blind.
So, we do have some funny stories. I've got one other one that I will share with you, and if I do, I'm going to go a minute over. Keisa, don't kill us. But in 2001, we were listening to a Vanderbilt football game on radio, and I make the following statement. First off, they're losing 37-0, and most of you know about the history of Vanderbilt football. And I said, HK, I really feel sorry for Vanderbilt.
Why, Mr. Bradford?
Well, they never win many ball games, and I'm sure the players' morale is probably not good. Their esprit de corps is probably low. The coaches lose their jobs.
Coaches lose their jobs?
Yeah, in college, HK, coaches are paid lots of money, but they're paid to win. If they don't win, they get fired.
That's sad.
Well, 2 years later, I become friends with Kevin Stallings, who is the basketball coach at Vanderbilt. Kevin invites me one day. He said, Jim, why don't you come to Vanderbilt and watch us practice one night? So I said, okay. HK, how'd you like to go to practice with me?
Would love it.
Okay.
Yay.
So we get to practice, and the team is already practicing, and they're on the gym and on the floor practicing. And so I wave at Kevin. I said, Kevin, can we kind of watch me? He said, yeah, that's perfect. I said, when you get a chance, come over. I want to introduce you to HK. He is a big Vandy fan. In a few minutes, he comes over and says, hey, HK, nice to have you at practice.
Nice to meet you. What's your name?
I'm Kevin Stallings.
I'm HK. What's your job?
I'm the head basketball coach at Vanderbilt.
Let me tell you what Mr. Bradford said. He said, if you don't win many games this year, you're going to get fired.
And as HK would say, as you can imagine, I haven't been invited back to practice. we have a lot of fun together. My wife doesn't like to travel with us because we cut up so much. She puts on headphones. But the story that HK shared with you earlier, his first portion is that all of you, if you try hard, without disabilities or with disabilities, you can do about anything in life that you want to do if you're capable of doing it. And HK proves that. Having one good friend can also change a life. My life has been changed by being HK's friend. I know his life has been changed by being my friend. Been very special. There are a lot of HKs on this campus at Lipscomb University. A lot of HKs in your hometown, wherever you're from, maybe in your church. May not be a blind boy with cerebral palsy. It could be a fellow student that's having problems with their coursework. It could be a person that's a student that their parents are going through financial difficulties right now. It could be an elderly person, maybe one of your grandparents, I hope not, but it could be an elderly person in a nursing home or assisted living facility that may have relatives nearby, but nobody ever comes to visit. That could be your HK. And if you can reach out to them, it could change their life, it could change your life. I didn't realize at age 56, 13 years ago when I met HK, that I had time in my life for another kid, okay? Here's a little guy that can't take a bath by himself, he can't dress himself. I don't ever think about those things. It's just a routine with me, and I know that people that have children with special needs, it becomes, sometimes they're their child for life, they're their kid for life. So there's lots of HKs out there that you can reach out to, and that's, I guess, the main thing we want to leave you with this morning. I've got a poem that I saw not long ago and I read that I just thought was very appropriate. Let me close this morning with the poem. HK, have you enjoyed being here?
Yeah, I did good today.
Okay, you did. Well, how good did you do?
Knocked it out of the park.
Okay. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of his friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between these years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way people really feel. And be less quick to anger and show more appreciation and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this little special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Thank you for having us.
Thank you.